The silence of the void was absolute, a perfect, unbroken quiet that had stretched for weeks. Inside the corridors of the Constellar Survey vessel Endurance, the hum of the life support systems was a gentle, ever-present lullaby. Captain Jun Park leaned back in his command chair, eyes scanning the main viewer. It showed a nebula, beautiful and useless, painted in colors no human eye could truly see. Another quiet shift in a quiet corner of explored space dot. His crew was small, efficient. At the science station, Dr. Lee Soo-jin tapped at her console, analyzing dust samples. "Composition is typical," she said, her voice calm. "Silicate, traces of carbon. Nothing to write home about." Jun gave a small nod. Home felt very far away. The piece shattered with a violence that was purely auditory. A screech of static burst from the comms panel, followed by a wave of panicked, multitonal chattering. The young comms officer, Kim Tae, flinched. "Captain." Broad-spectrum distress burst. "Source is close. It's overwhelming the filters." "On speaker," Jun said, straightening up. The bridge filled with sound. It wasn't a language, not at first. It was a cascade of fear, a digital scream. Beneath the panic, a repeating pattern emerged. A computer, somewhere, was trying to translate. Lee was already at Tae's shoulder, her fingers flying. It's a structured plea. Galactic basic code. They're begging for help. The translation stabilized, and a voice, synthesized but trembling, filled the Endurance. "Any receiving vessel, any species of conscience. This is Ambassador Kale of the Veln Collective. Our homeworld, our cradle, is under attack. The swarm, the Skrell, they are consuming everything. We cannot stop them. Our weapons, they adapt. We are peaceful. We implore you. Send aid, send warriors. We will give anything, please." The message repeated, a loop of desperation. Jun felt a familiar cold weight settle in his stomach. This was not their mission. They were surveyors, catalogers of empty rocks and dead stars. They had one small defensive laser for clearing micro-debris. They were not warriors. Source? He asked. "Got it," Tae said. "A Veln crystalline city ship, the Luminance. It's drifting just outside the gravity well of the fourth planet in the adjacent system. The planet is their homeworld, sir. Sensors are picking up. Massive energy discharges on the surface. And biological readings off the scale." Lee looked at Jun, her dark eyes wide. "The Veln. I've read the briefs. Herbivores, low-gravity origin. Technologically advanced, but pacifists. Their weapons are tools for mining and shaping light." On the viewer, Tae brought up the visual. The Veln ship was breathtaking. It looked like a snowflake grown to the size of a small moon, all delicate spines and facets that glowed with a soft internal light. And swarming around it, like black flies on crystal, were dozens of angular, ugly ships. They were firing pulses of green energy that splashed against the Veln's shimmering shields. "They're being hunted." Lee whispered Dot the choice was simple, and it was terrible. Answer the call and invite unknown hostility, or log the event and slip away into the dark. Jun thought of the fear in that synthesized voice. He thought of his own children, safe on Mars. He tapped the CUM to engineering. "Chief, prep the main drive for a tactical jump. We're moving." The jump was short, brutal. The Endurance shuddered into reality much closer to the Veln ship than was prudent. On the bridge, the view changed. The Skrell ships were all jagged edges and exposed mechanisms, a stark contrast to the Veln's beauty. One of them broke off from the pack, turning its blunt nose toward the human vessel. "Incoming transmission from the lead Skrell ship," Tae announced, his voice tight. "Audio only. A sound like grinding rocks, and clicking mandibles came through. No translation was needed. It was a threat, a challenge. "Open a channel to the Velen ship," Jun said, ignoring the Skrell. "This is Captain Jun Park of the Earth Confederation vessel Endurance. We heard your call. We are considering your request." The response was immediate. The visual of a Velen appeared on the screen. Ambassador Kale was elderly, his long neck bent with worry. He had large, liquid black eyes and fine, silvery fur. He stood in a room that seemed made of light and crystal. Behind him, other Velen huddled, their large eyes wide with terror. "Captain Park." Kale's translated voice was a whisper of relief. "You are answered. You are. Bipedal, robust. Your vessel, it is solid, yes. Not delicate?" Jun was taken aback. "It is durable, Ambassador. But we are a survey ship. We are not the warriors you seek. But you come from a world of warriors." Kale insisted, his thin hands fluttering. "Your physiology? Forgive my direct scan. Your bone density, your muscular density, your cellular regeneration rate. They are off our scale. Your planet, your records speak of crushing gravity, violent weather, rampant competition. You are Deathworlders." Lee looked at Jun sharply. The term was academic, sometimes used as an insult. Here it was spoken with a kind of desperate hope. "We survive our home, Ambassador," Jun said carefully. "That does not make us soldiers." A green energy bolt from the Skrell ship streaked past their viewport, a warning shot. The Endurance's weak shields flared. "Look at them," Kale cried, gesturing off-screen. "The Skrell. They are a swarm. They adapt to energy. They shrug off plasma. They are mindless consumers. But they are biological. They come from a stable, gentle hive world. They understand force, but not struggle. Not the true, endless fight of a death world." He leaned forward, his large eyes pleading. "We do not need your ship's guns, Captain. We need you. We need beings who understand predation, who see a storm and think cover, who see poison and think tool. We need the context of your evolution. Please, our children are on the surface." Jun was silent, watching the Skrell ship power up its main weapon. He thought of the Velen's delicate forms, their city of light. He thought of a swarm consuming a world. And he thought of the stories from Earth's history, of wolves and winter, of deserts and deep seas. He thought of what it truly meant to be from a world that constantly tried to kill you. He made a decision. He opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, prepare for possible hostile engagement. This is not a drill." Then he turned back to Kale. "We will help you, Ambassador. But not the way you think. We are not sending our ship into a fight it cannot win." He turned to Kim Tae. "Open a tight beam, highest priority channel to Sol Command. Use the black protocols. Message is as follows. Velen Collective Pacifist Species. Under existential threat from adaptive biological swarm designated Skrell. Their world is a garden. The enemy does not understand hardship. Request is not for fleet support. Repeat, not for fleet support." Jun took a breath, the old unofficial phrase feeling strange on his tongue. "Tell command, send the dusters." He cut the channel. On the screen, Ambassador Kale looked confused. "Dusters? What is this?" Jun watched the Skrell ship move into firing position. "The answer to your plea, Ambassador. Just wait." The Velen lunar base, called Serenity Point, was a monument to peace. Its walls were smooth, curved, and made of a material that emitted a soft, pearlescent glow. The gravity was set to a gentle Velen standard, making every human aboard the Endurance feel lightheaded and awkwardly powerful. The air was scented with something floral and mild. To the humans, It felt like walking through a gigantic, quiet nursery. Ambassador Kale had welcomed them with deep gratitude, his delicate hands trembling as he gestured them into a vast, circular chamber. A dozen other Velen officials stood around, their large eyes wide with a mixture of hope and nervousness. They stared at Captain Jun Park and Dr. Lee Soo-jin as if expecting them to suddenly sprout armor or energy weapons. "The Council thanks you, Captain Park," Kale said, his voice a soft chime through the translator. "Your swift response brought us time. The Skrull blockade has loosened since your ship's arrival. They are cautious. Now we await your warriors." He looked past them toward the entrance, as if expecting a legion to march in. "They will be here soon, Ambassador," Jun said. He himself didn't know what to expect. The Dusters were a legend even among the Earth Confederation fleet, a specialist division, drawn from the roughest colony worlds places with 2G gravity, acidic atmospheres, or relentless predatory ecosystems. They were problem solvers for when the problem was an entire hostile environment. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. "The transport has docked at Bay Oriole," a Velen voice announced. The Velen officials straightened, a ripple of anticipation moving through them. They were prepared for giants, for gleaming powered armor, for the dramatic, heroic warriors from their own ancient stories. The door slid open with a whisper. 3 figures walked in. They did not march. They simply entered, moving with an unsettling, efficient grace that seemed to ignore the low gravity. They were not tall. They wore not polished armor, but matte gray, modular tactical gear, scuffed and worn. Their helmets were off, carried casually. They looked like ordinary humans, but their eyes were wrong. They didn't dart around in wonder at the beautiful chamber. They scanned it once, noting exits, sightlines, the composition of the walls. Their gaze was like a physical weight. The leader was a man with a calm, lined face and close-cropped black hair. He stepped forward. Commander Min Tae-ho, 1st Deathworld Contingent. His voice was quiet, flat, devoid of ceremony. The woman beside him had a sharp gaze and dark hair tied back severely. Sergeant Ji-yoon. The third, a broad-shouldered man with a tool harness slung across his chest, gave a small nod. Specialist Han Gil. A profound, disappointed silence filled the room. The Velen officials exchanged glances. These were the legendary Deathworlders? They looked small. Under-equipped. Kale, trying to hide his confusion, stepped forward. We welcome you, Commander Min. Your reputation precedes you. Our tactical systems are at your disposal. We have schematics of the Skrull ground forms, energy signatures of their hive spires. Min listened, his expression unchanging. He let Kale finish his formal, desperate speech about shield harmonics and plasma frequencies. When the ambassador finally fell silent, Min spoke. "Your reports mention the Skrull are biological. They consume organic matter. They recycle it." "Yes," Kale said, confused. "They break down our forests, our cities, even our fallen. They process everything into biomass for their hive structures. And their armor adapts to directed energy," Min stated. "It learns, yes. After a few strikes, our beams become useless." Min nodded slowly. He turned to Specialist Han. "Atmospheric composition of the homeworld?" "Standard breakdown." Han didn't consult a pad. He recited from memory, his voice a low rumble. "Nitrogen-oxygen mix, similar to Earth normal. Trace gases. Notably high concentration of biosignature volatile organics from floral life. Low particulate matter. Weather patterns were, historically, mild and predictable." "Were?" Min asked, looking at Kale. Kale blinked. "The planetary environmental regulation system maintains stability. It prevents severe storms, modulates temperatures. It is for the safety of our crops and cities. I need it shut down, Min said. As if asking for the lights to be dimmed, the chamber erupted in soft, horrified whispers. Dr. Lee Soo-jin, who had been quietly observing, felt her jaw go slack. Shut down? Kale stammered. Commander, you cannot mean this. Without the regulators, the weather systems will become chaotic. There will be storms, electrical disturbances, temperature extremes. Good, Sergeant Ji-yun said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was cool, analytical. Kale looked from her to Min, utterly lost. Good? How can this be good? Our people on the surface are hiding, surviving. This will kill them. Your people are hiding in deep geologic shelters, yes? Min asked. The scans from the Endurance show that. Yes, but the Skrull are not. They are on the surface, in the open, building. They are used to a stable hive world. Their biology expects stability. Min took a step closer, his calm eyes holding the ambassador's terrified ones. You asked for Deathworlders, Ambassador. You didn't ask for soldiers to fight your war. You asked for survivors to fight our war. On our terms. The first term is the battlefield. We need a battlefield that helps us and hurts them. A storm is cover. A lightning strike is a weapon. A quake is a distraction. Specialist Han spoke up. Your geological surveys show significant tectonic activity under the primary Skrull landing zones. It's suppressed by your stabilizers. We can change that. You would make our world wild? Kale whispered, the concept alien and terrifying. We would make it interesting, Sergeant G corrected, a ghost of something hard touching her lips. The Skrull adapt to energy. Let's see them adapt to a tornado, or a flash flood, or a volcano. Jun Park watched, understanding dawning. They weren't here to shoot the monsters. They were here to turn the monster's new home against it, to weaponize the very idea of a world that fought back. The senior Veln council head, an individual with even paler fur than Kale, finally spoke, his voice trembling with outrage. This is madness. You would destroy what the Skrull have not yet consumed. We invited saviors, not vandals. Min turned his head slowly toward the councilman. The room grew very cold. You are being consumed. You are losing. Your way has failed. You called for help from a species whose cradle tried to kill it every single day. This, he gestured vaguely at the perfect, gentle room around them, is not a thing we understand. Chaos, we understand. Pain, we understand. Using the world as a weapon? He finally showed a hint of expression, a flat, grim certainty. That is the first lesson of our world. Now we need your permission to access the planetary regulator controls and your geological charge maps. Do we have it? He wasn't asking. He was presenting the only option left. Ambassador Kale looked at Captain Jun, a silent plea for reason. Jun thought of the desperate call, of the Skrull ships swarming. He thought of children in deep shelters, waiting for a rescue that gentle tools could not provide. He gave a single, slow nod. Kale's shoulders slumped in defeat and a dawning, horrifying hope. He turned back to Commander Min. You have it, he said, his voice a broken chime. Do what you must. Min simply nodded. Sergeant, Specialist, let's go make some weather. They turned and walked out, leaving a room full of stunned, fragile beings wondering just what kind of hell they had just unleashed upon their own world. The drop pod screamed through the atmosphere. It wasn't a gentle descent. It was a violent, controlled crash. Sergeant Ji-yun felt the vibrations rattle her teeth as the pod's heat shield glowed a furious orange in the viewport. The other 5 members of her fire team sat strapped in, silent, their faces calm in the flashing red interior light. No one spoke. They were saving their energy. The pod didn't land so much as impact. It carved a deep furrow into the soft, mossy ground of a Veln prairie and shuddered to a halt. The hatch blew off with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The smell that hit them was not of war, but of a dying garden. Sweet, cloying floral scents mixed with the acrid tongue of Skrell biosludge and distant smoke. G was the first out, her rifle up, scanning. The sky was a sickly green, streaked with the chemical trails of Skrell atmospheric processors. In the distance, the organic, twisted spires of a Skrell hive rose like a tumor from the beautiful, rolling landscape. It pulsed with a faint, ugly light. Teen 2, sound off, she said into her helmet mic. Teen 2, clear. We are at the ridge. We see the target. Specialist Han's voice was a steady rumble in her ear. Their job was the tectonic charges. Teen 3, clear. We are at the old river delta, preparing the cocktail. That was Kim, their bio-specialist. His job was the most delicate and arguably the most horrific. Copy. Move to objectives. Clock is ticking. G looked at her own team. Our job is the sky. Let's go make it angry. They moved. They did not run. They jogged with a steady, ground-eating pace that ignored the gentle Veln gravity. Their target was a planetary weather regulator station. From the Veln schematics, it looked like a graceful silver flower 10 meters wide, floating on an anti-gravity stem. It hummed softly, projecting a field that calmed the air for kilometers around. To G's team, it was a target. They spread out. 2 soldiers covered the approaches, while G and a private named Park set the charges. They didn't use high explosives. They used shaped plasma cutters and EMP discs. Park placed the discs on the regulator's glowing core. Ready, Sergeant. Burn it. Park triggered the discs. There was a sharp crack and a smell of ozone. The silver flower's light died instantly. It gave a sad, metallic groan and tilted, its anti-gravity failing. It crashed into the soft moss. For a moment, nothing happened. The air remained still, quiet, smelling of burnt wiring. Then a wind picked up. It was a small breeze at first, rustling the tall lavender grass. Within minutes, it grew into a steady, gusting wind. The team felt the pressure in their helmets change. Regulator 1 is down, G reported. Across the planet, similar reports trickled in. Regulator 7 down. Sector 12 grid offline. The Veln homeworld began to remember what it was without its caretakers. By the time G's team reached their second target, the sky had darkened. Thick, bruised clouds boiled where before there had been only a gentle haze. A low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. The second regulator station was guarded. A Skrell patrol, 3 of the creatures, scuttled around its base. They were the size of large dogs, with 6 legs, chitinous black shells, and clicking mouth parts. They saw the humans in charge, moving with terrifying insect-like speed. G didn't give an order. Her team reacted. They didn't aim for the center of mass. They aimed for the joints, the eye clusters, the softer spots between plates. Their rifles fired solid slug penetrators, not energy beams. The first Skrell stumbled. A leg shattered. The second took a round through an eye socket and went down twitching. The third leaped. Private Park met it with the butt of his rifle, cracking its shell, then put 2 rounds into its underside. As it fell. It was fast, brutal, and quiet. The Skrell hadn't adapted. They hadn't faced kinetics before. Their shells were designed to disperse energy, not stop hardened metal. Clear the bodies. Set the charges, G said, her voice even. The wind was howling now, whipping her hair around her helmet. As the second regulator died, the storm arrived. It wasn't a gentle rain. It was a torrent, a sideways deluge of cold, heavy water mixed with sleet. Lightning forked across the sky, striking the distant Skrell hive. The once gentle prairie became a freezing, muddy quagmire. G's team hunkered down in the lee of the broken regulator stem. They were soaked, cold, but their internal suit heaters kicked in. They watched the Skrell hive through the sheets of rain-dot chaos. Absolute chaos. The Skrell were not built for this. Their chitin, excellent against energy beams, became slick and clumsy in the mud. The howling wind confused their scent-based communication. Lightning strikes set parts of their organic hive matter on fire, and the pouring rain struggled to put it out, creating billows of toxic steam. Then the ground shook. It wasn't a gentle tremor. It was a deep, rolling heave that made the mud itself seem liquid. "Han, report," G said. "Tectonic charges placed and activated. We woke up a fault line. It's a small one. Just a magnitude 6. Han's voice was almost casual. "The hive is on unstable ground. It's listing." Through the storm, G saw it. The great, pulsing spire of the hive was tilting, like a sick tree. Sections of its outer flesh were splitting open, spewing green internal fluids into the raging floodwaters now forming around its base. Then Kim's voice came, thin with static from the electrical storm. "Cocktail is delivered. Repeater drones are airborne. The Skrell biomass processors are now digesting a gift from home." He had introduced a package into their recycling streams. It contained a dozen genetically engineered bacteria from Earth, things that thrived in extreme heat, cold, acidity, things that broke down complex organics with terrifying speed. The Skrell's perfect, efficient biological system had just been infected with a microscopic death world. The storm raged. The ground trembled again. From the hive, a new sound emerged over the wind. It was a high-pitched, chittering screech that rose from thousands of throats at once. It was not a sound of attack. It was a sound of panic, of systemic shock. G watched, water streaming down her faceplate. They hadn't fired a single shot at the hive itself. They hadn't needed to. They had simply reminded the planet how to be wild, and invited the Skrell to try and survive it. The once beautiful garden had become, in a matter of hours, a hell of water, fire, and shaking earth. A Skrell worker, its shell cracked and leaking, stumbled through the mud near their position. It was caught in a sudden, violent gust of wind, tumbled end over end, and was swept away into the raging river that used to be a stream. Sergeant Ji-Yoon keyed her mic. "Commander Min, objective achieved. The battlefield is ours." She paused, watching the lightning illuminate the falling hive. "They don't like the rain." The hive was dying. It wasn't a quiet death. It was a violent, messy collapse broadcast across the planet's screaming atmosphere. Sergeant Ji-Yoon's team watched from their muddy cover as the great organic spire groaned and listed further. Rivers of green ichor, lit by the constant flicker of lightning, poured from its ruptured sides. The chittering screeches of the Skrell had taken on a desperate, unified pitch. It was Sergeant G who spotted the difference. Movement. Northeast gully. A cluster moving fast. Not panicked, purposeful. She zoomed in her helmet display. 5 Skrell forms, larger than the workers, their chitin a darker, mottled gray, were moving with coordinated speed away from the collapsing hive. They were escorting a 6th creature. This one was different. It was smaller, more fragile-looking, with a bulbous, translucent head section that pulsed with a faint internal light. It moved on slender legs, almost carried by the larger ones. A neural weaver. Dr. Lee Soo-jin's voice came through the command channel from the Endurance, sounding tense. "Our scans suggest they're nodal controllers, local hive mind processors. Capturing one could be invaluable." Commander Min's order was immediate and simple. "Take it alive, Sergeant." "If you can." G didn't waste breath acknowledging. She pointed, made a series of quick hand signals, and her team moved. They were ghosts in the storm, using the howling wind and crashing thunder for cover. They followed the retreating group to a partially collapsed Velm structure, perhaps once a storage facility. The Skrull guards took position at the entrance. The Weaver scrambled inside. "Flush them," G whispered. Two of her soldiers provided covering fire, their solid slug rounds ricocheting off the guards' thick frontal armor, driving them back into cover. G and Private Park moved fast, low to the ground. They didn't go for the door. They went for a cracked section of wall, slipping inside just as a bolt of green Skrull energy seared the air where they had been inside. It was dark and smelled of damp earth and rot. The Neural Weaver was in a corner, its light pulsing rapidly. It had no visible weapons. Its large, dark eyes stared at them, not with fear, but with a cold, calculating alienness. One of the larger guard Skrull was inside with it, mandibles clicking. It charged. Park fired, hitting its leg. It stumbled. G closed the distance. She didn't shoot it. She swung her rifle like a club, the reinforced stock connecting with the joint between its head and thorax with a sickening crack. The creature went limp. The Weaver did not move. It watched. "Got it," G said, slinging her rifle and pulling out restraints made of a tough, flexible polymer. Securing the creature was unsettling. Its body was cool and dry, and it offered no resistance. As if the physical capture was irrelevant, getting it back to the temporary command post was a struggle through the storm. The Weaver was light, but awkward. Its guards harried them all the way, but the violent weather worked in the humans' favor. Finally, they shoved the creature into a sealed environmental chamber set up in a secured Velm bunker. Commander Min was there, his gear streaked with mud. Dr. Lee was on a large view screen, her face pale. "It's not communicating in any known mode," she said. "Its bioelectric fields are complex, but it's shut down, like a computer in sleep mode." Min looked at the creature, then at G. "Wake it up." This was the hard part. They had no common language. They had no shared concepts of pain or reward. They had only context. They had to speak in a language the hive mind would understand. Threat and survival. They started simple. They adjusted the chamber's environment. They dropped the temperature rapidly, simulating a deadly frost. The Weaver's light flickered, its body tensing. They showed it a visual feed of a Skrull worker being consumed by the hyper-aggressive bacteria Kim had released, the flesh dissolving at an impossible rate. The Weaver's light pulsed rapidly. It remained silent. Sergeant G had an idea. It was brutal, but it was the essence of their own world. She accessed the Endurance's archives. She found old nature documentaries. She projected them into the chamber. She showed the Weaver a lion taking down a wildebeest on the African savanna. Not the kill itself, but the slow, patient stalk beforehand, the calculation in the predator's eyes. She showed a great white shark emerging from the deep, a silent, ancient terror. She showed a Komodo dragon, its bite festering with 100 different kinds of death. She showed hurricanes forming over oceans, tornadoes shredding landscapes, volcanoes blasting ash into the sky. The Weaver watched. Its light never stopped pulsing. Then she showed it human history. Not the noble parts, the raw, brutal calculus of survival. She showed clips of ancient battles, of siege warfare, of the relentless, grinding conflict of trench warfare. She showed the silent, cold dread of the nuclear age. She showed the skyscrapers of Earth, built not in gentle meadows, but in defiance of gravity and wind. She showed the deep space mining colonies on airless rocks, the undersea habitats in crushing blackness. she wasn't showing it warriors. She was showing it a species that had evolved in a universe of teeth and claws and falling rocks, and had learned to make all of it their tool. A species for whom the Skrell's bioweapons were just another kind of bad weather. Their swarming tactics just another pack of predators to be outthought. Finally, she looped the current feeds from the planet's surface. The screaming storms, the erupting fault lines, the Skrell hives drowning, burning, collapsing, and in the middle of it, small, muddy figures moving with relentless purpose, not just surviving. But using the chaos dot, she forced a full neural-level link, pumping the data stream directly into the chamber's projection systems. Aiming for the Weaver's sensitive head, the creature shuddered. Its translucent head flared with light, patterns cascading too fast to follow. It let out a sound, not from a mouth, but from its entire being, a shrill, psychic screech of overload dot, and then it understood. The understanding wasn't a thought. It was a wave of cold galactic horror that seemed to radiate from the chamber. The hive mind, through this node, saw not an enemy army. It saw the context. It saw the cradle. It saw a world with gravity that crushed, with bacteria that poisoned, with predators that hid in every shadow. It saw a species that had looked at that and had not just endured, but had climbed to the top of that nightmare food chain and then looked up at the stars. Hungry for more dot, performed a calculation. The first of its kind for the swarm. It was a cost-benefit analysis for its entire species. The energy expenditure to fight these creatures was not just high. It was infinite. They didn't fight you. They turned your home into their home, and then they out-survived you in it. They would follow the swarm world to world and do this again and again. They were not prey. They were a new, terrible kind of environmental constant. The Neural Weaver's light stabilized to a slow, dull pulse. It went utterly still. The fight was gone. Not from this creature, but from the collective behind it. On the command screen, the planet-wide bioscan feeds changed. The chaotic, aggressive signals of the Skrell swarm shifted. The patterns broke. The cohesive will that drove them dissolved into simple animal panic. They're retreating, Dr. Lee said, her voice full of wonder. Not just from the storms. They're pulling back, everywhere. They're heading for their orbital ships. Commander Min looked at the silent, broken Weaver in the chamber. It was just a shell now. The mind behind it had made a decision for the entire species. Good, Min said, his voice quiet in the sudden quiet of the bunker. The storm still raged outside, but the war, they all felt, was over. It hadn't ended with a bang, but with a whisper of pure, calculated terror. The great hall of the Velm capital was restored, or at least, the parts that hadn't been digested by the Skrell were polished to a high shine. Soft light filtered through crystal panels. The air was once again still and perfumed. It was a careful imitation of what had been before. No one could ignore the scars, though. The new crystal had a different sheen. The sense couldn't quite mask the faint, lingering smell of smoke and wet earth dot. It was a ceremony of gratitude. Ambassador Kale stood before the assembled Velm Council, their silvery fur groomed, their large eyes reflecting the soft light. Before them stood the humans. Captain Jun Park and Dr. Lee Soo-jin in their clean, simple fleet uniforms. And beside them, Commander Min Tae-ho, Sergeant Ji Eum, and Specialist Han Gil. The dusters had cleaned their gear, but the matte gray tactical suits were still scuffed. The boots still carried a faint stain of alien mud. They stood with a stillness that felt louder than any Velm music. People of the Velm Collective, Kale began, his voice amplified and gentle. We gather to honor our saviors. From a distant world of struggle, they came when we had no hope left. They faced the swarm not with our failed weapons, but with the wisdom of their harsh cradle. They turned the sky and the ground itself against our enemies. They have given us back our future. He gestured, and a younger Veln brought forward a crystalline case. Inside, on a cushion of light, were shimmering data crystals and credit chits of immense value. We offer, with deepest thanks, the agreed payment. And we wish to offer more. A permanent embassy. A share of our crystalline technologies. An alliance between our gentle people and your formidable one. The hall waited. The Veln looked at Min, expecting gratitude, perhaps a dignified acceptance. Commander Min did not look at the treasure. He looked at Kale, then let his gaze travel over the fragile, beautiful assembly. "We cannot accept this," he said, his voice flat and clear. A ripple of shock went through the hall. Kale's hands fluttered nervously. "I do not understand. Is it not enough? We can negotiate. It is not about the price," Min interrupted, not unkindly, but with a finality that silenced the room. "We did not come for pay. We came because you asked for help from a death world." He took a single step forward. "You have sensor nets. You have scouts. You watch the galaxy. Your data is the most valuable thing you have. We will take that, not as payment, as a subscription." The Veln Council leader, the one who had called them vandals, spoke up, his voice thin with confusion. "A subscription? To what?" "To us," Sergeant G said, her words cutting the air. Min nodded. "You live in a gentle neighborhood, but the galaxy is big and dark. The Skrull are not the only predators. The next one might not be so simple." He gestured vaguely towards the ceiling, towards space. "We will leave a team here. Observers. They will watch your sensors with you. If something like the Skrull appears on the edge of your space again, you will not call for mercenaries." He paused, letting the words hang. "You will call the neighbors. From the bad part of the galaxy. You will call us. And we will come. Not for your credits. For the hunt. For the reminder to the dark that this garden, and others like it, are under the protection of something that grew in the thorns." The silence in the hall was absolute. The truth, vast and terrifying, settled over the Veln. They had not hired soldiers. They had not even hired exterminators. They had attracted the attention of a phenomenon. A protective, violent force that considered their sector its own backyard now. The payment was not wealth. It was a role. They were to be the canary in the coal mine, the lookout in the peaceful village that lived next to the deep. Dark Forest. Captain Jun Park spoke, his voice softer, bridging the gap. "Ambassador Kale, you pleaded for aid. You thought you wanted warriors. What you needed was a deterrent. Today, you have one. The story of what happened here will spread. The Skrull will carry it. Others will hear it. They will hear that the Veln are not alone anymore." Kale looked from Chun's calm face to Min's impassive one. He saw not greed, but a cold, stark logic. He saw the future. A future where his people could tend their gardens, compose their light songs, and sleep without fear. Because somewhere in the dark, the Deathworlders were watching, daring anything else to come and try. The fear in his heart did not leave. But it changed. It mixed with a profound, off-illed relief. They were safe, not because they were strong, but because they had, accidentally, put up the most terrifying, "Beware of Dog" sign in the galactic neighborhood. He bowed his head, a deep, formal Veln gesture of ultimate respect. "We understand," he said, his voice a whisper of acceptance. "The data is yours. The observers will be welcomed as family. The subscription is agreed." The ceremony ended not with celebration, but with a quiet, solemn understanding. The Veln watched the humans leave the hall, the three dusters walking with that same quiet, efficient grace. Later, on the observation deck of the Endurance. The blue-green Veln world hung in the viewport. Beautiful and scarred, Dr. Lee Soo-jin stood next to Captain Jun, holding a cup of tea. "Do you think they'll be all right?" she asked softly, watching the planet turn. They seemed so shaken. Jun stared at the world, and at the sleek, deadly-looking human observer ship now taking up a permanent orbit nearby. "They'll be fine," he said, a faint, hard smile on his lips. "Everyone knows not to cause trouble in the neighborhood where the Dusters live." Below, on the planet, the first unregulated storm in centuries was gathering on the horizon. A beautiful, terrifying dance of clouds and lightning. The Veln, safe in their crystalline cities, watched it with new eyes. It was no longer just a storm. It was a message. And it was written in a language the whole galaxy was starting to understand.